My life, like most lives, was a story of small but significant events. I wasn't a tycoon or a celebrity. I was just Evelyn, a woman who baked the best apple pies in the neighborhood and believed that a kind word and honest work were all one needed for happiness. And now, after the death of my dear Garrett, I realized I had one final, most important mission: to ensure my son, my only David, had a happy future. He had always been my son, my pride, and I wanted to give him what he had dreamed of. I remembered how, as a child, he used to say that he wanted his life to be like a fairy tale, and I was ready to do everything to make that fairy tale a reality. Today was the day I was going to announce my decision. I had arranged a small dinner, just like Garrett loved, with his favorite lasagna and a bottle of the Italian wine we bought on our honeymoon. I knew that David and his wife, Lauren, had been struggling with financial problems recently. David had lost his job at a large IT company, and Lauren couldn't find a stable job. They constantly talked about loans, mortgages, and how hard it was for them to make ends meet. I listened to them, and my mother's heart ached with pain. I knew I had a solution, and I was ready to offer it. I took out an old, worn-out box from the closet. It was my entire life: savings, stocks, pension savings, a small insurance policy Garrett had left me, and the deeds to our cozy little house in the suburbs. I gathered it all to give to him, my son. I wanted him to start with a clean slate, without debts and worries. I knew he was ambitious, and I believed that with this help, he could build the empire he had always dreamed of. My life was coming to an end, and I wanted to leave knowing that I had left him a solid foundation. When David and Lauren walked into the house, their faces were pale, and their eyes were empty. They didn't even hug me. They just walked into the living room as if it wasn't my home, but an office where they had come for a meeting. Lauren threw her bag on the couch and said, "Oh, Evelyn, you shouldn't have bothered so much. We're not in the mood to eat." I felt my heart sink, but I decided that today I had to be strong and that my gift would lift their spirits. I began my toast, remembering how Garrett and I had built our lives and how we had always believed in David. I spoke of his talent, his mind, and how proud I was of him. And when I finished, I handed him the box. He took it, and his eyes, usually empty, filled with greed. He didn't even look at me. He just opened the box and began to sift through the documents. Lauren immediately leaned over to him, and they, like two hungry beasts, began to study the contents. Their silence was louder than any words. I saw their faces change, from despair to hope, from hope to greed, and from greed to something I couldn't understand. "Mom," David finally said, and his voice was trembling. Are you serious? You're giving us everything?" I nodded, and tears of joy welled up in my eyes. "Yes, son. I want you to live without worries. I want you to finally start living the life you've always dreamed of." Lauren, who had been silent until then, suddenly spoke. "Oh, Evelyn, we don't even know how to thank you. This is just incredible." I felt happy. I had done something good. I knew my action was the right one. But what happened next changed everything. When I asked how they planned to use the money, David replied that he had found the perfect place for me to live my luxurious old age. He described the place as if it were a paradise on earth, well-kept, quiet, with a view of the lake. He said that I would be happy there, that I would have many friends, and that they would visit me every weekend. I believed him. I imagined myself in this beautiful place, drinking tea with my new friends and feeling calm and happy. I didn't know that it was all a lie, that David and Lauren had already decided my fate, and that my paradise was actually hell on the outskirts of the city. I didn't know that what he called a luxurious old age was a cheap and dirty nursing home. I didn't know that they were using my money not to start a new life, but to get rid of me. I was so naive that I simply believed them. What I learned next made me realize that I had made the biggest mistake of my life. But I won't let them enjoy their victory. I will show them what true luxury means and what it means to be a person who doesn't give up. But to see what happened next, you need to stay on my channel and subscribe. You won't want to miss a single minute of this story. The air in the living room, once filled with the warmth of my love, had turned to a thick, suffocating silence. The box, that testament to my life's work and my love for my son, was on the coffee table between us. David and Lauren, with their hands greedily sifting through the documents, had completely forgotten I was even in the room. Their faces, just moments ago pale with worry, were now flushed with a greedy, almost animalistic joy. The sight was sickening, a visceral punch to my stomach. I had given them my entire life, everything Garrett and I had ever built, and all they saw was a blank check with my name on it. My foolish heart, however, still hoped for a shred of gratitude, a sliver of the loving bond I thought we shared. David finally looked up, a triumphant grin on his face that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Mom," he said, his voice dripping with an oily sweetness, "you have no idea what this means to us. You've saved us. You've given us a fresh start." Lauren nodded vigorously, her own smile a plastic, manufactured thing. "We've been so worried," she chimed in, "but now we can finally live the life we were meant to." They talked as if I wasn't there, as if I were a ghost who had merely appeared to bestow gifts upon them. This complete dismissal of my presence, of my sacrifice, was the first sting of their betrayal. It was a subtle act, but it cut deeper than any harsh word. "So," I said, my voice quiet, almost a whisper, "what are you going to do?" I asked, my heart pounding with a desperate hope that they would say something about using the money to build a better life for themselves, something that would honor my gift. David's smile widened. He leaned forward, taking my hand in his. His touch was cold and unfamiliar. "Mom, we've already thought of everything. We've got the perfect plan for you. We found this amazing place. It's beautiful, really, on the lake. It's a community for people your age, with a clubhouse, a library, and activities. You're going to love it. We'll be able to visit you every weekend, bring the grandkids. It's exactly what you deserve, a luxurious old age with no worries." His words were like a siren song. The pain in my chest, which had been building since they walked through the door, momentarily subsided. The promise of a peaceful, worry-free retirement, surrounded by new friends and the occasional visit from my grandchildren, was a dream I had always held. I imagined myself sitting on a porch, looking out at a serene lake, finally at peace. It was a vision of a life that was calm, orderly, and full of the simple pleasures I craved. And it was all a lie. I was so emotionally vulnerable, so desperate to believe in my son's love, that I swallowed his words whole. Lauren, ever the practical one, pulled a pamphlet from her purse. She said, "It's called Lakeview Manor." She held the glossy brochure for me to see. I took the pamphlet from her, my hand shaking. The pictures inside were stunning. An elegant dining hall with chandeliers, a spacious library with a roaring fireplace, and a beautiful walking path that led to a glittering lake. It was everything he had promised, everything I had imagined. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, so strong that I almost cried. My son, my beautiful, ambitious David, had not forgotten me. He had my best interests at heart. I felt a surge of love and gratitude so powerful it almost blinded me. I smiled at him, my eyes filled with tears. "Oh, David, thank you." He smiled, a wide, empty, triumphant smile that didn't reach his eyes. It was the smile of a man who had just pulled off the perfect con. "We just want what's best for you, Mom. We'll get your things packed up. The moving company is coming on Monday." Monday, a jarring word that broke through my fantasy. A sudden cold jolt of fear shot through me. That's so soon.
"The place is very popular," David said, his voice now taking on a clipped, urgent tone. "We had to grab the spot before someone else did. It's all for the best, Mom. You'll be settled in no time." A chill ran down my spine. The pieces, which I had been so willfully ignoring, began to click into place. The haste, the vagueness about the location, the complete lack of discussion or consultation with me. I had to know the truth. I had to know what was in that brochure. Later that night, after they had gone, taking the box of my life savings with them, a gnawing anxiety kept me awake. I tried to convince myself that I was being paranoid, but the feeling of unease was too strong to ignore. I found the brochure, still on the coffee table where I had dropped it, and began to read. The pictures, so beautiful in the living room light, seemed to have lost their luster. The print, so elegant and refined, seemed to blur before my eyes. My heart began to pound in my ears as I noticed the fine print, so small it was almost impossible to read. Lakeview Manor, an exclusive community for the discerning retiree. It all seemed so beautiful, but then as I turned the page, my eyes fell on a small, unassuming article tucked into the back of the brochure, an article I had not noticed before. It was a printout from a local newspaper, a small black and white article with a grainy photo. The headline read, "Lakeview Manor, the truth behind the gated community." My heart stopped. I read on, my body trembling with a mixture of fear and dread. The article spoke of understaffed facilities, of poor sanitation, of complaints from residents and their families. It described a place that was not a paradise, but a prison. It was a place where old people went to die, not to live. I sat there, frozen, the paper in my hand. The truth hit me like a ton of bricks. My son had not found me a paradise. He had found me a convenient, cheap place to put me so he could take my money and live his luxurious old age without me. He had not only betrayed my trust, he had orchestrated a cold, calculated plan to get rid of me. The love I had felt for him, the gratitude, the pride, it all turned to ash in my mouth. My tears, which I had so carefully held back, now came pouring down, hot and bitter. But my tears were not tears of sorrow. They were tears of rage. A cold, crystalline fury settled deep in my bones, a fury that would not just flare and die, but would consume me, and then would consume them. I realized that my life had not been for nothing. My life had been a lesson, and they were about to get a final, devastating one. They thought they had won. They thought they had gotten rid of me. They thought they had taken everything. But they had no idea who they were dealing with. They had no idea that I, the quiet, unsuspecting Evelyn, was about to teach them the true meaning of luxury. You've seen the betrayal, the lies, and the heartbreak. Now you'll see the reckoning. What happens when a mother's heart broken by her own son hardens into a weapon?
The morning light, which usually filled my kitchen with a gentle, hopeful glow, now felt cold and sterile. It illuminated the crumbs from last night's lasagna, the untouched plate of pie, and the crumpled, damning newspaper article that lay on the floor. I sat at my table, nursing a cup of tea that had long since grown cold, and stared at the photo of Lakeview Manor. The image was grainy, black and white, a stark contrast to the glossy, full-color brochure Lauren had so cheerfully handed me. This wasn't a paradise. It was a prison, a place where the elderly were warehoused and forgotten, and I was to be its next resident. I, Evelyn, who had just given my life's work to my son, was to be discarded like a piece of old furniture. The betrayal was so complete, so profound, that it had stripped me of all my naive hope, leaving me with nothing but a cold, crystalline fury. My mind, once so full of gentle memories and warm affection for my son, was now a chessboard. Every kind word, every empty promise, every condescending glance they had given me last night was a piece to be moved, a move to be countered. I remembered David's words about luxurious old age, and a bitter, ironic laugh escaped my lips. Luxurious indeed. It was a masterpiece of emotional manipulation, a lie so perfectly crafted that I, the woman who raised him, had fallen for it hook, line, and sinker. The thought of it was infuriating. I had been so eager to believe in his love that I had ignored the most basic rules of common sense. I had seen what I wanted to see, and they had taken full advantage of my blindness. My initial shock had now morphed into something far more dangerous, a quiet, methodical rage. I was no longer a victim. I was a strategist. I, the woman who had spent her life baking pies and tending to her garden, was now a warrior. I had a phone in my hand and a list of people I needed to call. My first call was to my best friend, Carol. She and I had been through everything together, from raising our children to mourning our husbands. She was the one person in the world I could trust implicitly. I told her everything, the whole sword and story, from the lasagna to the lie about Lakeview Manor. Carol listened in stunned silence, her usual boisterous energy replaced by a cold, hard anger that mirrored my own. "Evelyn, you have to do something," she said, her voice a low, fierce whisper. "You cannot let them get away with this. You are not a piece of furniture to be discarded. You are a person, and you have rights." Her words, though simple, were a powerful affirmation. They were the spark that lit the fire of my resolve. I had been so focused on the betrayal that I had forgotten I still had a game to play. My second call was to Robert, Garrett's old lawyer. He was a kind, quiet man who had a habit of meticulously documenting everything. I told him what I had done and what I had discovered. He listened carefully, his voice calm and steady, and then he said something that sent a jolt of hope through my veins. "Evelyn, don't you worry. Garrett was a very smart man. He planned for everything. He always said, you have to plan for the best, but you have to be prepared for the worst. He had a contingency plan for a situation just like this." A contingency plan. The words were music to my ears. Garrett, my dear pragmatic Garrett, had seen it coming. He had seen the selfishness in his own son, the cold ambition that had always lurked just beneath the surface. He had planned for a day when his quiet, loving wife would need a weapon. A weapon, I thought, and my lips curled into a smile that was not at all sweet. The next few hours were a flurry of activity. With Robert's guidance, I began to make my moves. I had a call with the bank, a quiet, cold conversation where I explained that a large portion of my assets had been gifted under false pretenses and that I would need to freeze the accounts until I had time to reassess. I had a call with a real estate agent, not to sell the house, but to put a lien on it, ensuring that no one, not even a greedy son, could make any moves without my say-so. I, the woman who had spent her life as a quiet observer, was now a quiet puppet master, pulling strings that they didn't even know existed. The internal conflict, the tiny pangs of sorrow I still felt for the son I had lost, were now a distant memory. I was no longer Evelyn, the doting mother. I was Evelyn, the woman who had been betrayed. And I was determined to show them that a mother's fury is a force of nature. They had wanted to take away my life. I was about to take away their future, and I was going to do it with a quiet, methodical precision that would leave them utterly speechless. I promise you, you haven't seen anything yet. The first domino has fallen, and the rest will follow. What happens when a son and his wife think they've gotten away with the perfect crime, only to find that the unassuming mother they discarded has been playing a much longer game? You won't want to miss the next chapter when the real reckoning begins.
The quiet satisfaction that settled over me in the days following my conversation with Robert was a strange new sensation. It was a cold comfort, a stark contrast to the warm, fuzzy feeling of my old life. The house, which had felt so empty and full of ghosts, now felt like a fortress. My home, my sanctuary. The real estate agent, a sweet and efficient woman named Brenda, had been a godsend. She'd quietly, professionally put a lien on the house, explaining that it was just a formality to protect my assets. David and Lauren would never know it was there until they tried to make a move. The bank, bless their corporate hearts, had frozen the accounts with a chilling efficiency. I had simply stated that I had been emotionally manipulated into making a gift and that I had since reconsidered my emotional state. It was a phrase Robert had given me, a legalistic way of saying, I've been conned by my own son and I'm taking it all back. The language of the law I was learning was a beautiful, blunt instrument. I spent my days with Carol, drinking endless cups of tea and going for long walks. We talked about everything and nothing, but mostly we talked about Garrett. We talked about his quiet pragmatism, his love for our community, his almost psychic ability to see a problem before it happened. I told her about the contingency plan, and she laughed, a loud, triumphant sound. He was always a step ahead, Evelyn, always. David never had a chance. Her words were a balm to my soul, a reminder that I was not alone and that the love I had for my husband and his for me was a real, tangible thing that had outlived him. The phone calls started on Tuesday. At first, they were just calls from David, a couple of voicemails asking if I was okay, telling me he was excited about my new chapter. Then the tone changed. He called, and the voicemails were filled with a frantic, desperate energy. Mom, what's going on? The bank won't let us touch the accounts. They said there's a problem. Mom, call me back. This isn't funny. I let the calls go unanswered. I watched my phone screen light up with his name, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness. Just a cold, detached satisfaction. He was a piece on my chessboard, and he had just made a move that was blocked. He was an antagonist, and he was getting a taste of the system he thought he could outsmart. It was a beautiful, poetic irony. The confrontation came on Wednesday. I was in the garden, pruning my rose bushes, the very same ones I had pruned for that ill-fated anniversary dinner. The scent of the roses was a sweet, delicate counterpoint to the bitterness in my heart. A car pulled up, a new, expensive sedan, and David and Lauren came storming out. Their faces were a mirror of their panicked voicemails, red, desperate, and full of a simmering rage. "What have you done, Mom?" David yelled, his voice raw with a fury he had never dared to show me before. "The bank, the money, it's all frozen. What is going on?" I stood up, holding my pruning shears, and looked at them. They were a sight to behold. He in his expensive suit, wrinkled and stained with what looked like coffee. She in her designer dress, her hair disheveled, her makeup smeared. They looked like two children who had just been told that Santa Claus wasn't real. "What have I done?" I said, my voice as calm and quiet as a summer breeze. "I've simply reconsidered my emotional state. That's what I've done. I realized that I was emotionally manipulated, and I've taken back what's mine. That's all." "You can't do that," Lauren shrieked, her voice high and hysterical. "You gave us that money. You promised us." I looked at her, and my lips curled into a smile, a cold, hard smile that was nothing like my usual gentle expression. "I gave you a promise, Lauren, a promise of a luxurious old age. I gave you my life savings, my home, my peace of mind. And in return, you gave me a lie, a cheap, cruel, dirty lie. So no, I can't do that, but I can take it all back, and I have." David's face went pale. He finally understood. I wasn't just being difficult. I wasn't just having a momentary change of heart. I was playing a game he didn't even know existed. "You've ruined us, Mom," he screamed, the words filled with a self-pity that was almost comical. "I had a new job lined up. We were going to buy a new house. You've ruined my life." I looked at him, my son, the boy I had raised with such love, and my heart ached with a deep, profound sorrow. The boy was gone. All that was left was a selfish, greedy man who saw me not as a mother, but as a roadblock. The conflict, the external conflict that was raging between us, was nothing compared to the internal conflict I felt. The sadness for the son I had lost was a cold, bitter wound. "No, David," I said, my voice now low and quiet. "You didn't have a new job. You had a promise of one based on the assumption that you would have a large inheritance. You didn't have a new life. You had a plan to steal mine. You've ruined yourself. And you've done it all on your own." He stared at me, his eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief and pure hatred. He had called me unachieving, a woman who had just lived. He was about to find out that a woman who has just lived has a lifetime of lessons and a quiet, methodical power that he couldn't even begin to comprehend. They drove away, their expensive car screeching out of my driveway, leaving me alone in the quiet solitude of my garden. The roses seemed to smell sweeter now. The air felt cleaner. I was no longer a mother mourning her son. I was a woman taking her life back. And this was just the beginning. The real reckoning, the real price of their betrayal was still to come. You won't want to miss the final chapter where all the dominoes fall and they finally learn the true meaning of a luxurious old age. The finale is going to be something to behold. The silence in my home the morning after their frantic departure was a living, breathing thing. It was a silence of peace. A quiet calm that settled over me like a warm blanket. The garden, with its freshly pruned roses, seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The coffee maker, a gift from Garrett on our 25th anniversary, gurgled with a soothing rhythm. I was no longer a victim. I was a woman who had taken her life back, and the feeling was more intoxicating than any wine I had ever tasted. I had a final call to make, a final act to perform, and then, and only then, would I be able to rest. The call came from David. His voice, once so full of a casual arrogance, was now a pathetic, desperate whine. "Mom," he pleaded, "please, we need to talk. We can fix this. It was just a mistake. We were so stressed with everything. You have to understand." I listened to him, and a bitter, ironic laugh escaped my lips. A mistake. That's what he called it. A mistake. The cold, calculated plan to discard me, to steal my life and my peace was just a little mistake. The manipulation, the lies, the sheer audacity of it all. It was an intricate web of deceit, and he was trying to call it a simple misstep. The sheer hypocrisy of it all was breathtaking. "There's nothing to fix, David," I said, my voice as steady and cold as a winter stone. "The mistake you made was in thinking that I was a fool, that I was a piece of old furniture to be discarded. You forgot that I am a person with a mind, a person with a heart, and a person who has a lawyer." The last part of my sentence hit him like a physical blow. The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. "What are you talking about, Mom?" he stammered, his voice filled with a desperate, panicked energy. "What lawyer?" I took a deep breath and began my final, unyielding monologue. "Garrett was a very smart man, David. He always said, you have to plan for the best, but you have to be prepared for the worst. He knew you. He knew your ambition, and he knew that there was a chance that your ambition would one day get the better of you. He knew that the greatest gift a parent can give a child is not money, but a lesson. And he planned to give you the greatest lesson of all." I paused for a moment, letting my words sink in. He was a piece on my chessboard, and I was about to checkmate him. The money, David, the stocks, the house, all of it, it was never truly mine to give away. It was all tied up in a trust, a very special trust that Garrett had drawn up years ago, a trust that had a very special clause. "What clause?" he whispered, his voice now a desperate, panicked plea. "The clause," I said, stated that in the event of a profound betrayal of trust, a betrayal that would endanger my physical and emotional well-being, the entire estate, all of it, would be used for one purpose: to purchase and operate a retirement community for people who were in need of a place to live out their final years. And the perpetrators of the betrayal, the ones who had forced me into a luxurious old age, would be the first residents, with no ability to leave, with no money, with no assets, just the clothes on their backs. The place would be their final home, a permanent home. The silence on the other end of the line was now so thick, so profound, that I could almost feel it, a physical presence in the room. He had no words. He had no lies. He had no excuses. The perfect lie he had created, the perfect con he had orchestrated, had just been turned against him. A beautiful, poetic, and utterly devastating act of justice. "So, David," I said, my voice now soft and filled with a profound sense of finality, "the money you thought you had, the house you were going to move into, the life you were going to live, all of it is now gone. And the luxurious old age you promised me, that is now yours. You and Lauren will be the first residents of a beautiful new retirement community. It will be a place where you can learn to be humble, a place where you can learn to be kind, a place where you can learn what it truly means to be a person. And I'm going to make sure that the food is always served cold, just like your hearts." I hung up the phone, and a tear, a single, solitary tear, rolled down my cheek. It was not a tear of sorrow, but a tear of release. I had lost a son, but I had honored a legacy. I had lost a family, but I had gained my own peace of mind. I was a woman who had just lived, and I had just given my son everything he had. The final act was complete.